Right now, the building you're looking at, Britain's iconic Houses of Parliament, is literally falling apart. It's costing taxpayers £1.5 million every single week just to patch it up and stop it from collapsing. More than tens of thousands of defects and faults have been reported. There have been fires, asbestos incidents, sewage failures and falling masonry, and yet Parliament is still open. How is that even possible? The bill to fix it could hit £40 billion and take up to 61 years. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to. There is a right answer here. Politicians just need the courage to take it. To understand why this building is so hard to restore, you first have to understand how it was built. On the evening of the 16th of October, 1834, a fire broke out in the old Palace of Westminster. The cause? A stove used to destroy a pile of outdated wooden tally sticks, accounting records from the Exchequer, overheated and set the House of Lords ablaze. The fire burned through the night and became the largest blaze London had seen since the Great Fire of 1666. Crowds gathered along the Thames to watch. Among them were artists and painters who captured the spectacle. Remarkably, the medieval Westminster Hall was saved, largely thanks to a change in wind direction. What followed was one of the most ambitious architectural competitions of the 19th century. 97 entries were submitted. The rules were strict. The new building had to be designed in either Gothic or Elizabethan style, a deliberate nod to English tradition. The winner was architect Charles Barry, who collaborated closely with the extraordinarily gifted Augustus Pugin, then just 23 years old. Construction began in 1840. It would take 30 years to complete. Barry handled the grand structure. Pugin poured his genius into the interiors, carved panelling, gilded ceilings, and caustic tiles. Together they created one of the finest examples of Gothic revival architecture in the world. But even at its birth, the project was beset by controversy. Costs spiraled far beyond original estimates. Politicians interfered constantly. Sound familiar? Both Barry and Pugin died before seeing the building fully completed. Pugin worn to exhaustion by the project, Barry following him 8 years later. There is one more detail worth noting. Barry chose Anston limestone from a Yorkshire quarry to build the palace. It was easy to carve, which suited the elaborate Gothic detailing, but it was also soft and it eroded quickly. After a large chunk fell from the Victoria Tower in 1920, emergency patching work began. Some of that stonework has been replaced, much of it hasn't. The Victorian masterpiece was flawed from its first stone, and 180 years later, those flaws have reached a breaking point. Today, the Palace of Westminster contains over 1,000 rooms, 126 staircases, and 2 miles of corridors. Beneath its Gothic exterior lies a labyrinth of Victorian engineering, electrical systems, pipes, boilers, ventilation shafts, most of which have never been comprehensively upgraded. Survey teams have uncovered the true scale of what lies beneath. More than 14 miles of pipework and roughly 250 miles of cabling and electrical services have been layered on top of one another over decades. And if the failing infrastructure wasn't enough, the building also has another uninvited resident, hundreds, if not thousands of mice, running freely through its corridors. The challenges are enormous. Asbestos is present throughout. The electrical wiring is dangerously outdated. Fire safety systems are inadequate. The stonework continues to decay. The sewage system fails regularly. And between 2021 and 2024 reactive maintenance tasks, meaning emergency repairs, increased by 70%. According to those overseeing the restoration, the palace is falling apart faster than it can be fixed. And the people who work there, the thousands of parliamentary staff and the roughly 1 million visitors who pass through each year, are doing so in a building that poses growing risks. There have been calls to simply knock it down and start again. But the palace is a Grade 1 listed building and a World Heritage Site. That isn't an option. Nor is doing nothing. The question isn't whether to restore it. It's how and why. After more than a decade of debate, politicians still can't agree. The restoration programme was formally established in 2013. MPs were first asked to consider options in 2015. In 2016, a joint committee of both houses concluded that a full restoration was essential, and that a full relocation, often referred to as a decant, was the most effective approach. This would involve MPs and peers vacating the building entirely to allow work to proceed without interruption. In 2018, both houses voted to support that position. Then things began to unravel. In 2019, a sponsor body was established to oversee the work, but costs began escalating rapidly. By 2021, the chair of the Public Accounts Committee warned that the true price tag could be at least £12 billion, 3 times higher than earlier estimates. Some internal assessments put it even higher. In 2022, the sponsor body was dissolved, having spent around £100 million, and Parliament took back direct control through a new client board. Critics pointed out that the can had been kicked down the road for nearly a decade. The Conservatives have since called for the entire project to be paused and refocused. Party leader Kemi Badenoch has been particularly blunt, describing the restoration as out of control and accusing it of having turned into a basket case white elephant project. She has warned that what began as essential safety work risks expanding into, in her words, turning the Palace of Westminster into a net-zero Dubai hotel. The Conservatives launched a public petition calling for a fundamental rethink, arguing the project should be refocused on essential structural and safety works only, with stronger independent oversight. Even from within the process, there has been dissent. Conservative MP Jessie Norman, a member of the very client board overseeing the restoration, objected to the proposals, describing them as asking parliamentarians to approve eye-watering expenditures on a project with unclear governance and limited scrutiny. The other parties are divided. The Green Party has backed a full decant, calling for the repairs to be done as quickly and cost-effectively as possible. The Liberal Democrats have given their MPs a free vote. The Labour government, which holds a large majority in the Commons, has so far declined to state its position, saying only that the work must represent value for money for the taxpayer. There's a cautionary tale here. The Scottish Parliament at Holyrood ran catastrophically over budget and ended in a public inquiry. Lord Fraser's report found it was a failure of project management. Poor cost control, weak governance, politicians in charge of things politicians shouldn't be in charge of. Westminster is at risk of the same mistake, except the bill would be 20 times larger. So what should actually happen? The evidence is clearer than the politics suggest. So here's what the evidence actually says, and what politicians should do. The restoration involves replacing virtually every system in the building: wiring, plumbing, sewage, heating, ventilation, fire suppression, and IT infrastructure. The stonework needs repair, and in places complete replacement. Medieval structures need specialist conservation. Significant tunnelling is required beneath the palace to route new services, on soft London clay next to the Thames. There are currently 2 options on the table. Option 1. Full decant. MPs and Lords vacate the building entirely. Commons moves to the Northern Estate nearby. Lords to the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre. Duration: 19 to 24 years. Cost: up to £15.6 billion. Option 2. Staged works while Parliament stays partly in session. Duration: 38 to 61 years. Cost: up to £39.2 billion. This is not a close call. The full decant is clearly the right answer. It's faster, it's cheaper, by up to £24 billion, and it's what every independent expert has recommended. The client board overseeing the project says it plainly. We are beyond the point where putting off these major works is sustainable. The objection politicians raise is political optics. Nobody wants to be seen relocating MPs to nice temporary offices while public services struggle. That's understandable. But the alternative is spending an extra £24 billion and taking an extra 37 years. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's fiscal cowardice dressed up as prudence. The second thing that needs to happen is taking the project out of politicians' hands. The Holyrood disaster happened because politicians were running a construction project. This same risk exists here. The restoration needs an independent delivery authority. Professional project managers with clear accountability, ring-fenced funding, and freedom from parliamentary interference. Not a committee. Not a board that MPs can dissolve when the numbers get uncomfortable. Third, and most urgently, Phase 1 needs to start now. The client board has already recommended a first phase capped at £3 billion over 7 years. refurbishing the Victoria Tower, tunnelling works, building temporary chambers. A procurement process is expected to begin this year. Every year of delay adds an estimated £350 million in construction inflation alone. That's not an argument for caution. That's an argument for getting on with it. The numbers are stark. Spread across Britain's 34.5 million income taxpayers, the full decant option costs around £450 per person. The staged option, the one that takes 61 years, costs over £1,100 each, and every year of further delay makes that number worse. For context, restoring Notre Dame de Paris after its 2019 fire cost around €9 billion. That was a single catastrophic event. Westminster faces a century of accumulated neglect, and the very real risk of its own catastrophic event. Because the other thing nobody wants to say out loud is this. The Palace of Westminster is right now a serious fire risk. The wiring is old, the fire suppression is inadequate, and there are miles of hidden voids where a fire could take hold before anyone even knew it had started. The building that rose from the ashes of 1834 could face the same fate, not because it was unavoidable, but because politicians couldn't make a decision. The Palace of Westminster was built by two men who gave everything they had to it and never lived to see it finished. What they left behind was imperfect, expensive, politically fraught, and utterly magnificent. That feels like an appropriate metaphor for democracy itself. My own view? This building is worth saving, not just as architecture, but as a statement of what a country thinks of itself. Nations that let their great civic buildings crumble are usually nations that have stopped believing in their civic institutions. Britain isn't there yet, but it's closer than it should be. The decision that Parliament faces now isn't really about limestone and pipework and decant strategies. It's a simpler question than that. Do we still believe that the places where we make our laws, where we argue and debate and hold power to account, deserve to be treated with seriousness and care? I think the answer has to be yes. The harder question is whether the people inside that building agree. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. And if this video made you think, even just a little, about what we owe to the buildings that shape us, then it's done its job.